All right. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Chan for putting on this event. Like, it's really exciting that we have a meetup dedicated to this. So thank you so much for this. So as you heard, my name is Mark Dalglish. That's my face there on the screen. And I'm here today to talk to you about sketching in the browser. So I work at Seek, and at Seek, I've been working as a design ops lead for about a year now. Actually getting up to like a year and a half soon. So it's been a while. This is what our style guide looks like. Or actually, it looked like this maybe a couple months ago. We've refreshed it slightly, but this is basically what it looks like. This is the website. But that's not where it began life. Like a lot of companies working in this space, our journey started with a static style guide, the design team, just getting everyone together and trying to agree on what are the patterns now that we've all split up and we've got all these separate projects we're running. How do we come from the same voice, the same look and feel? And that's where the static style guide came in. Not long after that, Sketch really started to take off as a prominent design tool. And the desire to get a static style guide led into Sketch. So what we had soon after that was our first kind of UI kit in Sketch. This is what it looked like. This is actually open source. It's on GitHub. You can go have a look at this. It's still available. And it was just a set of symbols to really get you started. Not the most comprehensive thing in the world, but definitely better than nothing. A little bit further down the track, we looked into how we could start sharing those Sketch assets across team boundaries and keep them up to date. We looked at a tool called Craft, which is a suite of Sketch plugins from InVision. The most notable of which is the library plugin. So what it does is it lets you share those symbols across the document boundaries. You can point to a central source of truth for those symbols. You can keep them up to date, feed changes back and forth between different teams. It's really great. But the problem we found over a longer period of time, of course, is maintaining this project, keeping it up to date, and most importantly, staying in sync with production. Everyone's moving at such a rapid clip in all these different projects. The patterns can change and evolve on any given day within any given project. And it's hard for these centralized assets to really keep up to date with those things. But most importantly, like, it really took a lot of work. And this was a side project for designers to maintain this in addition to their daily work. It was around this time that we were starting to invest in React. I think React is really a common thread of people working in this space. Not everyone's using React, but I think the reason it keeps coming up is because of its strong focus on components, and that really feeds into design systems in general. It wasn't long after we started our first React project that we started our first living style guide. It began as a folder within our first React project, and as React started to spread through the company, the need for us to take that initial folder of a style guide and start to share it between those teams led to the creation of this repository on GitHub, which is now open source. Our goal was really about syncing design and code, and that kind of goes without saying. That's what this whole movement's about. That's why you're all here, of course. So jumping forward quite a bit in time here, one thing that came out that really caught our attention was a project called React Sketch App from Airbnb. For me, this was one of the biggest turning points in my design ops journey in terms of thinking about the boundaries between design and dev. In the blog post that announced this project, John Gold from Airbnb, he said, in Sketch, we use symbols and overrides. In React, we use components and properties. The concepts are so similar that it seems silly not to unify them. This is a really groundbreaking change for our industry, I think, because what it means is that we're starting to realize that designers and developers are landing on the same abstractions. And that starts to unlock a lot of potential. So in terms of what Airbnb are doing with this, you can really see that they're running with this in a big way. So here you can see what it looks like within Sketch. They've got some additional Sketch plugin work that they've done that unfortunately isn't open source. But here you can see on the left side of their Sketch window, they're selecting a symbol that they want to drop into the document, or a React component in this case. And they're providing the options like a developer would in code. They're doing it in the UI. As they do it, it's populating an instance of that symbol that they can then drop into the document. And it's following all those same rules that you typically would expect, again, if you're working in code. You're starting to have your design tools speak the same language as your developers. The challenge with this, once we started to look into it, is that React Sketch App comes with a few requirements. First of all, you have to use React. That's kind of written on the tin, so that's obvious. The second one took me a while to realize, which is that you have to write your styles in JavaScript. We're not opposed to that, but we've already built up our own design system that's not built with this technology choice, so that was a real challenge for us. And third, you have to build everything in your style guide with cross-platform primitives. That means view, text, style sheet instead of divs and spans and h1s and so on. Essentially, the way to think about it is you've got to build your app as if it was your style guide as if it was a React Native style guide that also happens to target web. It's the same primitives essentially under the hood. So that was a real disappointment for us because as much as we wanted to go down this path and start to share our style guide across the dev design boundary and into Sketch and to the different tooling, these requirements were a real blocker for us. It meant that if we were going to use it, it was going to be a long-term play for us to migrate our style guide to this tech stack. The challenge that we really wanted to face was the fact that we had multiple sources of truth, designers maintaining their own style guide, developers maintaining a living style guide. What we wanted to do was see if we could figure out what's the best way to solve this problem, at least in the short term, even if long term we might move to something like React SketchUp. One idea that we'd written off fairly early on was the idea of checking sketch files into Git. Typically, that's a bad idea to take a binary design format like a sketch file or a Photoshop file and check it into source control. Typically, that's a really bad idea. But what's really interesting is that Sketch changed their file format relatively recently. I think it's maybe a couple of years ago now. So you can actually open up a sketch file yourself and have a look at the insides of it and actually make sense of it. The trick is that a sketch file is basically a zip file. So if you take a sketch file on your computer and you rename it to .zip, you can open it and you'll see something like this. So you'll see some JSON files, you'll see a couple of folders, there's thumbnails in there and things like that. But it's all fairly human readable and understandable. If you open those JSON files, it's a little bit noisy, but if you step through it, it's not too bad. It's relatively human readable, and it's just a static representation there of what you see in that sketch file. So the interesting thing about this is it means that if you can zip and unzip this file, you could check this into your Git repo instead of the raw sketch file. In our case, we did it with some hand-rolled node scripts, but there's actually a tool that you can use today called Cactus with a K, with the cutest logo ever. And it's basically Git for Sketch because it does all that zipping and unzipping for you, and it manages the fact that underneath there are just standard JSON files where a change to a sketch file might be one line in one of those JSON files. It deals with all of that for you and checks that JSON into Git for you. So what's really cool about this is it means we've brought the world of Git into Sketch, and we've done it in a way that we can now bring our code and our design assets into a central location and have that central source of truth. So the theory for us was that if you want to change a component in the style guide, you would, at the same time, whether it's yourself or with the help of a designer, change the corresponding sketch file and check them in a single go. The challenge, of course, is that this also took a lot of work, and you might have already sort of pinpointed what the issue might have been, which is that not everyone has Sketch, not everyone knows how to use Sketch, and managing the zipping and unzipping of files and reviewing them on GitHub and all that stuff, it didn't really play out that well. And basically, it didn't happen. It was a nice experiment, but quite short-lived. So again, we were back to this place where the theory was great. In practice, it wasn't working for us. It was really frustrating. So we kind of gave up on that. And it felt like this is where we were going to stay for a while. It was really disappointing. And that's when HTML SketchUp came along, just randomly on Twitter. John Gold, in fact, was the one who tweeted out about it randomly. And as soon as I saw it, my mind was blown. If you go look at the README for it, Conrad Zweinel, he said that we were unable to quickly work around these limitations. So we created HTML SketchUp. There he's referring to the same limitations I was talking about with React SketchUp. So they'd hit up against the same problem. They had a purely web-based style guide. They built up all of these components in, I think in their case it was React, but still standard web-based components, and they needed to get it into Sketch, and that's where HTML SketchUp came in. So I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this. I was in such a hurry to check this out because it felt like we'd really unlocked the solution to this problem that had been plaguing us for a while. So what HTML SketchUp is it's basically a couple of things in one. It's a JavaScript library for dynamically creating, essentially creating the JSON that you saw before. It's a library to ease the creation of those. And it's a Sketch plugin so that you can pull that JSON into your current Sketch document. So the JavaScript library exposes a bunch of things to you, the most notable of which being document class, page, text, symbol master. So you can create documents, you can create pages and add them to the documents, text nodes, you can create symbols. And finally, where most of the heavy lifting happens, it's the node to sketch layers function. So that's a function that can take a node for an element in the browser. You can convert that into sketch layers where you can then turn those into JSON. So just to run through a bit of pseudocode of what that looks like in practice. Here, what you can do is, on the first line, we've got a reference to a node in the browser window, and we're going to convert that into sketch layers. So now we've got an array of sketch layers in this format provided by HTML SketchUp. So we can iterate over each of those layers, and in this case, we're adding them to an instance of a symbol that we've created. So now we're starting to add sketch layers from elements of the browser into a symbol that we've created. You can create a new instance of a page, a sketch page, and you can iterate over all the symbols you've created, and one by one you can add those symbols to your page, and then finally you can turn that page into JSON and do with that what you want. Typically, of course, you'd write that to disk. So the standard convention there is to create a couple of JSON files, document.asketch.json and page.asketch.json. And if you're like me, you're wondering, why is it a sketch and not sketch? It means almost sketch. And this is a format that HTML SketchUp kind of invented. I won't go into too much detail, but basically there's a couple of limitations in the sketch file format that prevent you from programmatically creating a sketch file, which is really annoying. The dream would be you just spit out a .sketch file. Unfortunately, the format's not quite there yet. It's almost there, hence the name. So anyway, enough of the slides. I'll show you what it actually looks like in practice in a real style guide. So no smoke and mirrors. So this is our style guide here. As you saw before, you see it's a little bit fresher than before, but basically the same. And we've got all of our components and everything that you expect in a living style guide like this. But we've got a hidden route called Sketch Exports, which just top to bottom lists out everything that we want to take a snapshot of to export into Sketch. So there's all of our text styles. We've got a color palette there. And then, of course, all of our symbols and all their various forms. And so there's quite a long list, not too long. So all of that stuff gets snapshotted and converted into Sketch, as you'd expect. In terms of the code, the way that works is, so here's our Sketch exports page. I won't go into too much detail. This is really just the high level. But what we're doing, like a lot of the work happens in these lines here that I've highlighted. So we're importing every file ending in .sketch.js. That's a format that we came up with. So we're pulling in all of our theme sketch files and all of our React .sketch.js files. And we're pulling in all the colors, we're pulling in all the text components, all of the block symbols and inline symbols. And so all of these are now available to us on this page, and just one by one we iterate over them and output them onto the page in a format that we can scrape later, basically. So those sketch.js files, again, this is a format that we just came up with for ourselves to make it as easy as possible for developers to add new symbols for Sketch. So the most obvious example, of course, is button.sketch.js. So here you can see that it's as simple as saying export the symbols, and it's an object where the key is the name of the symbol and the value is a React element. So we iterate over these, we output them to the screen with the corresponding name so that can get picked up. And you can see that from a developer's point of view, it's very easy to see and edit this code, to review it, to see a diff in GitHub. If I'm making a pull request and I want to add a new option to the button, I can just see that there's a new line here for the sketch exports, which is really great. Another example of what we export as well is our text styles. So here we're exporting all of our text styles, but we're also exporting them as symbols as well, because unfortunately, Sketch libraries today, they don't support text styles, they only support symbols. So we output both. And finally, our palette. So here we're actually pulling in all of our colors from our less files. So all of our entire palette is defined in less. We pull that in, we convert it to JavaScript, and then we output that to the screen. So from the point, so where you really want to see it happen, of course, is in Sketch. So we've done all that work. We've listed everything out on a single page that we want to export to Sketch. We've got HTML Sketch app, so we can convert it. So here's what it looks like in terms of pulling it in via the Sketch plugin. So here you can see how it's a bit small, but I'm going to plugins and from almost Sketch to Sketch. So if I click that, so here are the JSON files I've prepared earlier. So these come out with every build. I just highlight these two files, click choose, give it like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4, 5. So still a lot less time than doing it by hand. So there's all of the symbols top to bottom, and they're actually, it's more than it looks like too, because they're all, we don't actually care about laying them out nicely. They're all stacked on top of each other. So that means that if I go over to a new page here, I can start to insert these symbols. So here's my little symbols menu, and sorry, that's going to be really small. But I can put a header for Australia, unauthenticated, mobile. There's a bug. I'm working on that. They didn't used to support SVGs in HTML SketchUp, and they just added support. And unfortunately, it's not 100%. So I'm going to have to do some bug fixing. But let me pull in. Oh, okay, well let me use the one that is working, because this is still a work. This is actually a work in progress. What you're looking at here. The cool thing about Sketch, if you didn't realize, it's got support for shared libraries now built in. So you can basically open any Sketch file, and you can. So I can do it to this. I won't do it, but you can say File, Add as Library. And what that means now is that this document exposes all of its symbols just globally to Sketch. So in any other Sketch document, I can start to pull in the symbols from this document. So in our case at Seek, what we've done is we've put our Sketch library on our shared drive, and we get the designers to open up that file, add it as a library, and now that stays up to date as we keep it up to date. So from the point of view of designers, this is what it looks like. They've got this Seek Style Guide library menu item just permanently in Sketch, any document. And so I can go in here and I can say header, this will work this time, header, Australia, unauthenticated on mobile. I can add the footer, same deal. I can add a button group with a pink and transparent. Oh, desktop, wrong size. Doesn't matter. Now the cool thing about, one thing that I didn't realize until I started playing with it is that you can actually, you can override some of you can override the text. So just by default, without you having to do anything, if you look there, it's really small. The overrides on the right-hand side, you can see it says button 2, button 1. I can literally jump in here and make the pink button say save, and I can make the transparent button say cancel as easily as that. So rather than messing around and making you watch me, here's one that I made earlier. But I want to stress, like, I made this in about 60 seconds. And it's all based on our React components. And the cool thing is that one thing I didn't really drill into much, I might do it a bit later actually, but you can see that for every single symbol, we've got multiple versions like at different sizes. And that's all automated because it's just resizing the browser window, taking a bunch of snapshots, do it again, take some more. So that means that all the mundane work of trying to get a responsive Sketch symbol library up to date and matching production, so much work goes away. So yeah, that's it in Sketch. That's it kind of end to end. Now, I'll quickly gloss over this list, but one of the things that I found difficult about this process was HTML SketchUp is actually relatively low level if you think about it. It's just a JavaScript library that lets you create JSON, and it's got a Sketch plugin, and that's all it does for you. Like, how you actually get access to your code and how you find all the symbols, how you make all that work is up to you. So in the case of our style guide, when we first had this working, all of this was managed in code written in our style guide. We had to compile a script that would find everything on the page. We had to start a static web server. We had to open Puppeteer, which is a headless version of Chrome. We had to open that up, point it at the right URL. The script we compiled in step 1, we now had to inject it into the page and start calling functions on it. So that allowed us to capture the symbols, resize the window, repeat for all the different viewports. We then had to write the JSON to disk, and then finally we had to shut down everything we'd spun up in those first few steps. So it's not impossible. I was able to get this working, but you can see it's a lot of plumbing code for a style guide. Like a style guide, just at a high level, you really just want to say, just find the symbols on this page, and that's it. So I had a bit of a think about this, and I thought, you know, how can we start to extract some of this boilerplate out of the style guide? Particularly because at Seek, we actually had a separate brand that were interested in this, and I realized they were going to have to copy and paste all of my junk code that I'd hacked on it, you know, in a few days. And I really wanted to try and get this under control and centralize this work. And so that led to the creation of HTML SketchUp CLI. It's our open source wrapper around HTML SketchUp that does all that heavy lifting on top for you. Make it as easy as possible. That's the goal. So all of that process that I listed up before, that you would have to write all that code yourself, now it's as easy as running this HTML SketchUp command. You can point it at a file, so you've got your sketch.html with everything you want to expose to Sketch. You just point it at that file, and then you say you want the JSON files to go out to this directory. You run that command, and it just works. For that to just work, we have to have a few opinions that we kind of force on you, but they seem we proved them out at Seek first. They seem to be pretty good opinions. So the first problem is, you know, how does this tool know where your symbols are on the page? Because it's just a sea of HTML. How does this tool know what are the symbols? What are they called? What are the text styles? What are they called? What are the colors? This is basically the way we kind of structure that. So you just put these data attributes in your HTML. So anywhere on your page, you've got a symbol that you want to expose. You say data sketch symbol equals and the name of the symbol. And if you know anything about Sketch naming of symbols, if you put a slash, that creates a nested menu within Sketch. So you can see that in the case of if you've got a style guide, you could start adding these pretty trivially and point this tool at that page, and you're done. If the config starts to get a bit unruly, you can have an external config file. That's what we do at Seek. So our config basically looks like this, where we're saying we want to fire up a file server at our documentation folder. We want to go to the Sketch exports URL. And the most important thing for us, like a really great feature that I touched on earlier, is that you can define the viewports. You can say that we want to export desktop and mobile, and these are the resolutions that we want to support, that we want to expose. So what I'll do is I'll quickly show you what that tool looks like. So here's our style guide on the command line. On the left panel there, we've got our local development server running. So that's what allows me to, this is what's running off that server right now. So that's running locally. Over here on the right, I've got my little script that I can run. So I can go npm run HTML SketchUp. So that is what runs during every single build of our style guide on CI. For this command to work, it expects that you've previously built the style guide website and it's on disk. If like me, you're often iterating on it, you actually want it instead to point to your development server. So I've got a -dev version. So this doesn't build anything. It literally just assumes that I've got my local dev server running. So if I run that, you can see it's gone HTML SketchUp with my config. Again, it takes a few seconds and it's done. So that's actually gone and done everything that we talked about before. One thing that's really neat, it's perfect timing because I wasn't going to be able to show this to you. I just merged the PR this morning from Ryan Seddon, if any of you know him, from Zendesk. He's been playing with this as well, and he's added this really neat debug mode, which makes for a really good demo. So I can add --debug to the end of this, and it will actually open up a visible browser instance. Yeah, so you can actually see what's going on. See how it's resizing the window. It keeps the browser window open as well. So if you want to check out, inspect the page, look at the dev tools and that kind of thing, you can do that. All of the console logs got forwarded into the terminal as well. So it's pretty neat. If things go wrong, you can start to drill in and start to understand it. That's a really cool feature, brand new feature. So that's it. So yeah, the whole idea of this is to make it so that if you're not right on the bleeding edge with this stuff, it's a good time to jump in. The tool makes it really, really easy to get started. Now, as cool as this is, and as proud as I am of the work we're doing in this space, and we continue to iterate on this tooling, I really want to stress that this is only temporary. Like, to me, this is a workaround over a much deeper problem in our industry and the tooling that we have at the moment. There's a lot of people working in this space, and they're all trying to solve it in different ways, which I think is really interesting. I have no idea which way it's going to go. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of Figma, which is, it seems set to basically take over from Sketch, because it solves some of the most fundamental problems with Sketch, because it's basically Sketch in a browser. So people don't have to be on Mac. They don't have to install any special software. They can collaborate much easier. Figma, literally like a week ago or so, they just released their API. So finally, like we're doing with Sketch, there is actually now a programmatic way to create files in Figma and upload them, download them, that kind of thing. So hopefully I'll have time to take some of the experimentation we're doing and port it over to Figma. If not me, someone else will beat me to it. Like, it's coming. Everything you've seen here, I'm sure, will be in Figma very soon. But there's a bunch of other tools that are doing really different things. It'd take the length of this talk again to go through all of these. But Compositor, Interplay, Elva, Haiku, Webflow, UXPen, they're all trying to solve, you know, this same problem that DesignOps is essentially all about. Because we're all trying to get that single source of truth. We're trying to make it so that design assets, development assets, they're all one and the same, changes to one flow to the other. We're really not there yet. We're making great strides, but there's still a lot of work to go. Because the ultimate goal, I think, is for us to be working together in the same medium. And even everything I've shown you tonight is not doing that. But what I'm finding is that this work is really starting to set the tone for moving our culture in this direction, because it's a really big culture shift. But it's one that I'm really excited about, and I hope you'll join me on that journey. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Wow. My mind is blown. Amazing, amazing. I don't even know where to begin. So if you want to start, where do you start?
Start small. Like the very first thing, your starting point will be different to mine now, because the tooling's a lot easier now. But literally the first thing that got me started was just taking our style guide website that I showed you and just snapshotting the whole page and just putting that whole page into Sketch, just to get a sense of like, how much can this thing do?
Sure.
So I think just look for that, like, what's the minimum thing you can do to just get started? And if you're anything like me, like, you get that first taste and like, you're off.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. We'll open it up to a quick 5 minutes of question time. Does anyone have a question for Mark?
If there are changes in the code, how does it change in Sketch? Like, do you have to keep saving and uploading it, or is it synced?
Yeah. So it's mostly automated. This is where my frustration about the fact that there's like a manual import in Sketch comes in. Basically, it means that I have to remember to, like, whenever there's been a sizable change to the style guide, I have to go through that sort of manual process of going into Sketch, running the plugin, and pulling in the JSON. And then saving that file somewhere. And so in our case, so you can see it's like mostly automated. It's just a very short manual step. But then I save that Sketch file into our shared drive. And so the cool thing about that is it means that once you've saved that file, if people are syncing that shared drive, that folder on the shared drive to their machine, and I've seen this happen, it just updates pretty much live within Sketch. So for the designers, it's pretty automated. It's manual on me. I'm pretty excited about Figma though, because Figma will get rid of that whole thing. It'll just I could do it from CI, like every build of the style guide, I could just hit their API, which is something I really want to do.
Wow, that's awesome. Any other questions? Yes, over here.
What is that microphone?
That's so cool.
You got to explain that microphone.
You mentioned this was sort of mostly shoehorned into React at the moment. Are you aware of any sort of other projects going on, say a Vue.js one? Be pretty
Yeah, so I don't know if I don't know if I was maybe not clear enough about the distinction. So the cool thing about HTML Sketch App is it's not coupled to any like front end tooling. Like it's literally, I mean, it's in the name. Like it's literally, you point it at HTML. That's it.
Great.
So that HTML could be coming from Vue. It could be coming from like an old PHP app or like anything. Like as long as there's HTML in the document, it'll work. So that's pretty cool. The downside is it means you do lose the component model, right? So if I want to show a component with a bunch of different options, I literally just have to spit out 5 versions just kind of statically. It's like printing it, right? Like I have to print copies of the component.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Come on, someone's gonna want it.
All good. We can always come up and chat with Mark
Yeah,
afterwards.
I'll be hanging around.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.